Good afternoon, beloved community. I am Melissa Miller, host of The Chosen Heroes, and thank you for joining me this Sunday afternoon. We have a very special guest, Dr. Juliette Engel, joining us. I wanted to first say that today marks the 52nd Sunday, 1 year of the Chosen Heroes podcast. And I give all of the credit to God for paving the path to form the podcast. And I just simply heeded the call. And I want to thank you, to all of those who tune in and like, share, and subscribe to the content. And special thanks to Sean and Targeted Justice and all the guests that have appeared this past year. My mission is to give all those that are targeted a voice, a compassionate ear, and a platform to share their experience. And I want to play a video that Sean put together. I don't know what I would do without him, so again, much acclimates to Sean. He put together this video as a thank you and reminder of what the Chosen Heroes is all about. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Chosen Heroes. We are brave. That's why I decided on the name The Chosen Heroes, because we're hand-picked. Do you know how special and brave you are? Think of it. You've had every advanced technology and neural weapon used against you, and you are still breathing and standing here today, and that's for a reason. And you have a calling on your life, and you are appointed by God to be that message and that beacon of light in this world of darkness, because there are people that are brand new coming into this. And we as a community are going to rise up, and we are going to be that net that casts and reels them in, and know that they do not have to suffer alone in silence. They don't have to recoil and just give up their life and their well-being and give up their existence because this is happening to them. Because why? We are the light makers. We are that beacon shining out to them.
Back in November 2024, the brave souls from Targeted Justice and the beautiful mind of Melissa Miller gave birth to a brand new podcast, The Chosen Heroes. We wanted to bring a podcast specifically for TIs, from those who recently discovered that they're being targeted, to those who've been dealing with this for years. We wanted to make a show that appeals to everyone. We are aware on how determined the world tries to silence you, so we wanted to create a platform for TIs to let their voice be heard. Every Sunday, we've introduced new strategies on navigating through the program. We've presented several healing techniques, kept you up to date with the latest news impacting our community, and brought on amazing guests from all different walks of life that were willing to share their experiences and advice. It has now been a full year.
Congratulations.
And we wanted to take our time in thanking you for keeping this show alive.
Thank you.
And thank you so much.
Rather, if you've shared this show with your friends, reposted our videos on your social media, or just simply tuning in live, you've contributed in making Chosen Heroes what it is today. We have no plans on stopping anytime soon. As long as you keep watching, we will keep producing excellent content.
That will be good news for the targeted community.
You know, this community is so important, and I love you all, and I will continue to pray for your breakthrough and to release you from these vicious programs and psychological warfare that's being done against you. And much love to you all, and looking forward to next week. Thank you. Again, thank you to everyone who has been here from the beginning, or if you're just now finding out about the podcast, I appreciate your support. Let's kick it off with Targeted Justice news for this week before we bring up our very special guest.
After a 4-day cross-country drive through Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, and Virginia, Anna and Richard made it to D.C. Anna has been looking for a safe and affordable place to operate from. No small feat in Washington, D.C. Her fundraising campaign to finance the DC mission is ongoing. Please note that, although she surpassed the goal for the first month's expenses, at Targeted Justice, we believe her deployment will last at least 6 months. Please consider becoming a paid subscriber to her newsletter, annatoledo.substack.com. This is just one of the ways you can support her mission for justice and freedom for all.
The world woke up today to the news that Dick Cheney passed away. The monstrous criminal that directed the targeting program for more than 10 years from the heights of the majestic 12 Committee can no longer serve the devil on this earth. This event can be construed as a sign of good things to come.
Fellow advisory board member Dominic Halpin has recently released the incredible documentary, Cognitive Liberty, Mind Control. This masterful, well-crafted film depicts the ongoing events of the targeted program, MKUltra, updates of targeted justice informing Congress, and interviews of targeted law-abiding citizens revealing their harassment. Special thanks to the brave individuals who participated in this film. You can watch Cognitive Liberty for free in its entirety on YouTube. We only ask that you share it with others to help spread the word.
Attempting to explain to your loved ones that you're a targeted individual can be a challenging task. That is why Targeted Justice has taken upon themselves to compile an in-depth guide on how to accomplish this objective. Targeted Justice. We got you. Meet our team of officers in diverse areas that are helping Targeted Justice grow to meet the needs of the community. Jill Amack has done amazing work leading government relations. She has been promoted to our advisory board, where she will continue advising this effort, and also work on other projects as well. Betsy Sibernson is our new officer for government relations. Betsy has been assisting Jill in our efforts with government officials. This is a critical part of our mission in Washington, D.C. Public advocacy, journalism, and legal actions. Professor Javier Dadan is our country manager and ambassador in Argentina. Although he has been working in this role for some time, we wanted to make it official and recognize his efforts. Miguel has been instrumental in reaching out to Hispanic TI communities in the United States and Central America. He will be leading our efforts in Mexico as a country manager. We are also looking for country managers that can assist in specific areas. If you would like to volunteer to work for any of our officers, please send an email to tjustice2@proton.me. Remember, volunteers don't necessarily have the time, they just have the heart.
Calling all digital warriors. Please repost, share, and like this video on all social platforms. We still need volunteers. What skill sets do you have? Tell us by emailing tjustice2@proton.me, and in the subject line, put volunteer. Enjoy what we do? Want more? You can go to Rumble to catch live shows and replays. Do you know Targeted Justice has its own store? Buy something for yourself or give it to that special someone. You can buy different clothes, merchandise, and etc. by going to the following links. Please consider donating to our site or send a check. We're a non-profit organization, and donations are tax deductible. Every little bit helps. Thank you again for watching this video. God bless. God bless. God bless. God bless.
Great job, as always, Sean does on the Targeted Justice newsletter video. I want to give a quick shout out to tievents.org. Tranquility does an amazing job of organizing all events for our community. Every day of the week affords you an opportunity or an option to plug in with those who understand you best and know what you're going through. And as stated in the newsletter video, Anna is expanding out to probably 6 months in DC to gain the attention of those in those powerful roles, that to get that ear and to be our voice, to reach and expand out greater awareness of what's happening to us to get these programs shut down. So if you are able to, please visit her givesendgo.com/Toledo site to make a donation. Upcoming guest next week will be Armando Della Toro, who is with Target Source LLC. He's going to be giving us the latest and greatest updates on all of his genius inventions, including the Silent Night and much more. On November 23rd, Derek Robinson will be with us. He is the president of PAX International. And rounding out the month at the end on the 30th, Valdemar Del Oliveira will be joining us. He has a brand new podcast, and he's also on the Targeted Justice volunteer group. So tune in, please. And thank you again for all who subscribe, follow, like, and share the Chosen Heroes content. Juliette Engel is a medical physician, a radiologist, retired now, and a survivor whose extraordinary life story spans espionage, trauma, and global activism. Born into a family of OSS, CIA, NSA operatives, Juliette was sold into CIA's MKUltra Monarch program by her father at age 6. She endured years of mind control, satanic ritual abuse, and a planned future as a CIA prostitute before escaping at 17. With remarkable determination, she rebuilt her life, funding her own education through university and medical school to become a physician in Seattle, all while suppressing memories of her harrowing childhood. In her memoir, Sparky, Surviving Sex Magick, Juliette candidly recounts her experiences as a survivor of childhood mind control and trauma. While on a mission to enhance medical care for children in Russian orphanages, Juliette uncovered a chilling connection between state institutions and international network trafficking young girls in Scandinavia for prostitution. Undeterred, she traced the operation northward into Norway, confronting the vast underbelly of the 20th century slave trade. This pivotal encounter ignited her lifelong commitment, and over the next decade, she traversed the former USSR, often at immense personal risk, to forge the Angel Coalition, a grassroots alliance of villagers, educators, police, media, and government officials. Together, they established an underground railroad that rescued and thousands of trafficking victims. As the Soviet Union crumbled, Juliette bore witness to a nation's rebirth, observing the Russian people's resilient quest for identity amid chaos and upheaval. Under her leadership in Moscow, the Angel Coalition saved over 70,000 children in just 10 years. And today, Juliette heads Our Country, Our Children, an organization tackling similar crises in the U.S. Her journey weaves through medicine, international advocacy, and unyielding personal strength. And she has recently launched a nationwide public awareness campaign along with her podcast, Angels Over America. Hi, Juliette. Thank you so much for joining us here today. It's an honor and privilege to have this discussion with you. And I commend you for all the many years and efforts that you've done to help those, spread awareness about human trafficking, child trafficking, and all the work that you've done.
Thank you, Melissa. That was quite a nice introduction, and I'm very glad to be here today. And I think that the MKUltra program and the people that have been through that program in the U.S. Will be extremely interested and need to become aware of targeted justice.
Yes, and with you and your experience, being part of the MKUltra program, which spanned from family of an American intelligence operatives. It was your grandfather and his 4 brothers were OSS operatives in Europe during the Second World War, and they were in Nuremberg, Germany, through the Nazi trials, instrumental in the resettlement of hundreds of Nazi scientists from the concentration camps of Germany and Poland into the U.S. under Project Paperclip. And your uncle, Wally, was recruited into the OSS at the age of 14 and, served as a cryptologist in the Enigma Project. He became a founder of the National Security Agency. And then it was in 1955 that your parents had sold you into the CIA's newly established Bluebird program, only at the very tender age of 6 years old. And you discuss in your memoir, Sparky, Surviving Sex Magick, the experience linked to the mind control programs. What role do you believe family involvement in intelligence work played in exposing individuals like yourself to the MKUltra related experiments?
Well, it was a situation. It was the end of the war. The criminal Nazis were in Nuremberg, ostensibly to be tried and executed for their horrific crimes. I'm talking about the ones that were carried out in the concentration camps. But they brought all of their results with them. They brought their experience, and they began to bargain for their freedom. And I had 2 great uncles and 3 uncles there at Nuremberg, all prominent German secret speakers, all elite intelligence officers, as well as other people. So I would call that group the group of evil men who came together in Nuremberg, and the American intelligence officers realized that the Germans were bringing them basically 100 years of research into torture, abuse, satanic rituals, magic. The Germans had been collecting the mystical, magical spells and lore and theology from all over the world for close to 100 years. They'd even gone to Turkey and removed the temple of Pergamon, the altar of Jupiter, and taken it to Berlin. So they had collected, they had a huge collection of research and material, which they convinced the Americans was the secret to mind control, to being able to completely control the population and create a docile, easily manipulated slave class, which they had the world divided into goats and sheep. So they wanted the elites and their families to be the goats and everyone else is a sheep. So they were successful. The Germans convinced the Americans to take this material. So in 1947, the CIA was formed from the OSS. From 1947 to 1949, the Nuremberg trials were conducted. And then from 1948 to about 1952, Germans were transplanted and brought to Huntsville, Alabama, where they were relocated to a series of facilities, which the CIA then called CIA safe houses. So the CIA was brand new at the time. The elite groups who were negotiating with the Nazis, not only for the mind control programs, but for all kinds of scientific endeavors. I'm only focusing on, I think, about 2,000 of them that came for mind control. So by 1953, the MKUltra program was started by the Dulles brothers, Alan Dulles, who was head of the CIA, the newly formed CIA, and John Foster Dulles, who was the Secretary of State, and given unlimited funding and resources to facilities all over the United States. And then they went deep undercover, and until really the last year, completely denied that this program had ever existed, in spite of the fact that the people like my uncle put their own children into the program. So I grew up in the MKUltra program. Every step of it involved torture, electroshock, satanic ritual, everything to fragment my mind and to create amnesia so that I could never reveal anything about the program, and also a series of suicide programs. So every time you step into your own mind, you trigger a suicide program. So I lived with this. I really didn't get back into my memories until I wrote Sparky, which meant 50 years later.
Mhm.
And but I'm now 76 years old, so because I went in the very beginning, I'm coming out sort of at the head of a bell curve. Very few survived. Very few survived mentally intact, and the death rate from being in the program and then the subsequent drug abuse and suicides estimated at probably only 1% survive intact. But you have people coming out the other side, and what we're finding is we're finding each other. So we're beginning to connect through the medium of the internet and podcasts and organizations like Targeted Justice. We're finding that we're actually all over the country, and not only that, we're all over the world.
Right.
And it's what we're discovering is that the program was the same, whether it was Montauk, the Montauk boys, or whether it was me in Southern California, or whether it was the group in South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and we just met someone from Scotland who grew up in the MKUltra program. It was the same elements, the same design, the same goals, the same fracturing of the mind, and then targeting of the individual to create an army of Manchurian candidates. Basically, that's what I was destined for.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept it completely hidden. People that revealed it were persecuted, prosecuted. You lost your jobs, you lost your credibility. No one believed you, and you also then triggered suicide programs without any. If you went to a therapist and began to remember, a lot of people then committed suicide for inexplicable reasons, and the reason is that they were programmed as soon as they remembered to kill themselves. So people have suffered with this, not in the greater scale of time. It's really only been since 1953, but in our country. But that's 3 generations. So this has become ingrained in our culture, and the effects of having taken what they considered their best and their brightest and put them through torture, mind control, fragmentation, developing dissociative identity disorder, which I have, and you're seeing the results of that in the crazy way our country is just being torn apart and misguided and easily led by people that they are programmed to follow. I mean, it's a dangerous and it's unfortunate. And the only thing I see that's positive about this is that in December of 2024, the CIA, through the National Security Archive, released the first batch of documents where they admit to it. So this has been 70 years of denying all of this, of calling everyone that claimed they were in a government torture program or mind control program crazy, and driving them out of work, getting them committed to medical programs or eliminated entirely. So no relief, no help, no recognition of survivors until December of 2024, when this document came out. And this document is a collection of 1,200 documents. It's a portfolio with a 33-page explanation where they admit to everything.
And for those watching, you can access these documents. As Julia stated, there's been 2 releases. The first one was in December of 2024. That is the first link that you see. This again, you can go to the National Security Archive, which is nsaarchive.gwu.edu. The full link is listed on the screen, but you can also search for National Security Archive and MKUltra program. Then in October of this year, they released even more documentation, which is the second hyperlink listed there. So when you do the search, you will be able to find all of these documents.
Yes, can we open the document?
It doesn't allow me to do the link from here, unfortunately. But if they navigate to the website, then they will have it here. This is more like a PDF. So, but I've gone through it, and it's quite extensive amount of information. Were there certain documents that really stood out to you that you want to talk about that are mentioned?
Yeah, I'd like to be able to show the pictures.
Let me see if I can share my screen. We might be able to do it that way. All right, let me just tell me if you can see this as I pull it up. All right. Okay, let's see. Are you able to see this screen, the website screen? Okay.
Yes.
All right,
Can
let
you?
me expand it. Is that better?
Yes. Could you scroll down?
Sure.
So this is the first picture is Sidney Gottlieb, who was the first director of the MKUltra program, and continued to direct it for about 30 years. He was selected from the Technical Services Division of the OSS because they ran the bioweapons division. He was a leading experimenter on mRNA and was known as the chief poisoner of the CIA. So he worked with the Dulles brothers, and they developed a relationship with the Eli Lilly company to provide unlimited amounts of LSD for experimentation. And the documents in here show that they had LSD coming in by the tons. You know, you give it out by little drops on a blotter, but they were getting it in tonnage quantities. So that's the size and the scope of the experimentation that was going on. And can we go down a little farther? That's Richard Helms. This man, George Hunter White, was my controller, was the person that picked me up when I was 6 years old, and then was a major influence in my life in terms of abuse and handling and directing my programming for many years. The next man down is one of the worst of the torturers of children's programs. He developed a huge MKUltra program in Montreal, Canada, which is the building that you see just below him there at McGill University. And that was Cameron McEwen. So you can go down a little farther. This is Dr. Gerschichter at Georgetown University, and the CIA gave him an entire wing for Georgetown University Hospital. Actually gave the hospital the entire wing, but the deal was then the wing maintained one sealed off section that none of the other patients or doctors could get to. And they did that throughout the United States. So there were over 85 institutions that had what they called CIA safe houses with active MKUltra programs by the mid-70s. So you can imagine what it's like now. Even though they said they've discontinued it, they absolutely have not.
Correct.
And my childhood was I would spend half my time at home. I would have to spend half the school year in school, just enough to be legal. And then the rest of the time I was in institutions like this one, where I was undergoing the mind fragmentation, the abuse, and a great deal of energy work and going through portals and extrasensory, not just experimentation, but actually traveling interdimensionally.
Mhm.
Okay, can you down a little bit more? Are there any more pictures there? So each of these is a collection of documents, and it's an amazing collection to go through because they included things like the little notes that these beasts wrote to each other on napkins. And one of the files is about how they decided that they had to think about the future. Like, what if some of us survived? What if we then came back and sued them because our human rights had been violated under the Bill of Rights? So their solution was not to improve the program or save the children. It was to start importing foreign children for the very deliberate reason that they were not covered under the Bill of Rights and they couldn't grow up and sue. So, I mean, it's just every inch of this is just so beastly evil. So can we go to the next document? Because in October 30, this is a big collection. It will take you some time to go through, but it's really worth going through because it's an example of how the government creates plausible deniability and is able to target tens of thousands of people. If you add up how many people are living today who've come out the other side of the MKUltra program with all kinds of consequences from the program, there's probably about 300,000 of us in the United States who are still alive and millions who died in the program. So you're looking at something the size of the Holocaust. So, and it's the perpetrators of the Holocaust who did this in our country to our children, to our people. And one of the big consequences of this is if you go through the mind control program and you cooperate and you give them your free will, which is what they're after all the time. At any time you can go through a ceremony and surrender your free will. Then you become one of the chosen. If you're a singer, you're promoted to the top. If you're it doesn't matter if you have talent. If you're a writer, you get published. All of these. You get the bling, you get the rewards, but you're a malleable piece of clay in the hands of the handlers. And if you don't, then you're locked out. So you're locked out of government. You're locked out of running for office. You're locked out of the top awards.
I'm trying to find the one for the October because I need to be able to at least paste that link and I can't get to it at the moment. Give me just a second and I'll bring up the October documents. Did that one have some pictures as well?
It did. But we're fine with that first one.
Okay. I think I can get it.
So the second, there we are. So the second group that came out largely focuses on the testimony of the Church Commission, which took place in the mid-70s and was the only time in our history, except for some testimony to the National Security Agency in the 1990s that has been sealed and we can't get a hold of. This is the only time that there's been a public examination of the MKUltra program. And it did reveal that the program existed. It did reveal the size of the program. It did reveal who was involved. And then they shut it down immediately. So there was no follow-up from this. The sites kept running. The CIA claimed that they had burned all of the documents and that everything had been destroyed. And
then all of a sudden they just have reappeared, right?
Yeah, they've just reappeared. Exactly.
Kind of
Exactly.
like all these other documents that they say they don't have anymore.
Yeah, so we've gone from the 1950s when this started to here. It takes us up to the mid 80s. And I hope they keep going because
Mhm.
things changed names, things got more sophisticated, um, things the growth of computers and smartphones and cell phones and electronics and grooming went online. So um, it's only gotten worse. And on
Do
the other
you
hand, the same technology is what's letting us reveal this.
do you think that, from the 50s when all of this began to present day, that instead of doing the defragmentation, the splintering of the mind in in a facility per se, that they are able to use the frequencies to take care in place of the in-person torture?
Yes, and I think that a lot of the electronic targeting that is going on
Hmm.
now is right out of this developed right out of this program, the same series of facilities, and it's all tied into DARPA
Hmm.
and Kathy O'Brien has written quite a bit about the connections in the national security world
Hmm.
and how it was funded and how it was supported and why. So basically, they were training spies, and they were training. Uh, they wanted to train an elite level of stars that they could control, and they've largely done that.
Right. And what are some of the lesser known aspects of the MK Ultra, such as it's an international reach, and specific techniques do you think deserve more public attention?
Yes, absolutely, and it really is only since we've started doing global chat rooms using the podcast technology that we've realized. I mean, this is like just in the last few weeks that we've understood
Hmm.
that this has been happening in countries all around the world using the same techniques developed by the same people and so it's i- so we've pretty sure that it's at least 300,000 Americans. When you add the rest of the world, I can't imagine how big it is. Also, I know it was happening in Russia while I was there. Actually, I wrote a book. My book, Moscow Traffic, talks a lot about is really about the rise of the Russian mafia and how it came out of the children's prisons and concentration camps, which were a result of the Nazis scientists being brought to Russia after the war. So I was writing about all this without really even remembering at that time that I was a victim of that. But I was actually one of the first ones in the program because of my uncle
Hmm.
and my family's connections to all these are easily documented. So
Do you think that, children that are in families that, um, their parents, or they have a lineage of being operatives from other family members before the parents, that it's just something that is done by, selecting a child to go into these programs? And what would you think that the reasoning would be that a parent would, you know, be okay with giving their child over for this type of programming? Do they feel like that is something special to be, so have a child put through this in terms of what they do in their operative, role?
I don't I have a hard time because I suffered through this giving any altruistic motives to anyone in my family for doing this to me.
Mhm.
Um, in doing my genealogy, which I did because I did everything I could to try and explain how this happened to me, why this happened to me, who my family are, who they were, where they came from. Well, it was quite an illustrious family when I mapped it all out, and very high level of inbreeding. So the family only married within the family. So they were royal lines, and they married other royal lines, and then cousins married cousins, and on it came down the line, and found out by going back 3 generations that it wasn't unusual for parents to give a child to another family who wasn't related to them, who then raised that child as their own. And I only know that because of ancestry and cousins who were in that circumstance, who were given away and grew up in unrelated families, turn out related. They're my first cousins. So we're trying to figure this out. But it does seem to be something that went back quite a long ways. And I used to, one of my biggest blocks in beginning to recover memory is my horrible guilt about the fact that I lived through this. I mean, at least twice a year, I was involved in rituals that involved child sacrifice, and I saw many, many children die. And I would be abused. I would be sexually abused. I would be horrifically damaged. I'd come out of it with blood dripping out my nose and big black eyes, but I wasn't dead, you know?
Mhm.
So I never, that was the hardest thing for me to give up. It's like, why did I live through this and they didn't? And why couldn't I save them? And I think then for the rest of my life, I went through life trying to save them. So
Right.
my work in Russia,
Mhm.
I helped organize the railroad that saved thousands of children,
Mhm.
but I couldn't save the ones who'd already died. So it's complicated. I think they were training us. They thought they had the key through this Nazi research and all this magic that had come to them through all these documents, 100 years of German research into magic spells, magic objects, that taught them to travel transdimensionally, and they were training me and others to travel through interdimensionally, through time and space. And there were ceremonies like in a beach in Mexico. They would take, I remember, they took 30 kids down to Mexico, and we ran around for 2 weeks in our underpants. And every night there would be a ceremony, and we would be required to face the ocean and open portals, go transdimensionally, and bring beings back with us. A lot of children died. Most of the children died in those rituals. But I didn't die, and I wound up with my hair was so matted and full of dirt and salt that it had to be shaved off. But that I think that's as close as I am to understanding why they were doing this to us. We were supposed to be time travelers, space travelers, interdimensional travelers.
Mhm.
I spent my whole life trying to do the opposite of everything they ever wanted me to do. So it was a matter of constant opposition.
You definitely embodied taking that horrific experiences and turning it into such a beautiful purpose to help save so many children with the Angel Coalition. And so you've given immensely back. It's just I'm at a loss of words at your resilience and triumph over the horrific things that you were subjected to. But that also tells me that you had a higher power calling over your life. God, covered you and knew exactly just what would come from all of that experience, that you turned it into so much purpose to help so many that were being trafficked in, and the children as well.
Yes, it's true. I always had, it's like this for me. I always had the core connection to God. And
Exactly.
my grandfather tried to cut it out of me. He cut a inverted cross right on my forehead that was supposed to block that, but it didn't. And
Well, I mean, that really just solidifies the fact that I think that a lot of targeted people can resonate with. And that's why it's so important to have that connection with God, a higher power, and to raise your consciousness through the tragedy that we have been subjected to, and the torture and the torment. To me, it just kind of presents that fork in the road. Either you're going to gravitate toward that connection with God, and taking the experiences and the tragedy and the torture, and transforming that into activism, and just that tenacity to move forward. Or, like you said, like many who it was just too overwhelming, and it was just too much, and they self-suicide. It seems like that has been going on, and that has been like a very prime goal in this whole program, to sequester the truth and to keep it silent, by encouraging and triggering emotionally within people who have suffered such torment and torture to self-suicide, or be discredited by people not believing what they are saying in truth.
yes, and I do want to put out a warning to everyone that reads these documents, is that if you see yourself in there, if you start realizing that you have big gaps in your memory, I mean, lots of people start thinking, well, gee, I don't remember anything before the age of 12. Well, there's a reason for that. You've got a blockage there for a reason. And when you begin to unblock, which you can, then you're going to hit the suicide program. So be ready for that, and understand that you don't need to get all the memories all at once. They don't need to overwhelm you. Pick at them a little bit at a time, and understand that the suicide urge that you get is programmed into you. Someone put it there. It's not yours. Don't listen to it. I dealt with this all the time, and I still run into the suicide programs, which start are so draining, and so people, be aware. And you need to, if you're going to go to a therapist, make sure the therapist understands that you're unraveling an MKUltra program, and make sure they have the documents so that they can look at that and understand that, yeah, this happened to people, and the person who might look perfectly normal to them is at risk for suicide, because they might trigger a kill switch in themselves. And so we can't let that happen. But, just the scale of this, you take all the people who are targeted electronically and through the internet, and all the ways that you describe in Targeted Justice, plus you take the MKUltras who were targeted as children, and then all the offshoots of that program, like the GATE program, the Gifted and Talented Education Program, which was more mind control for slightly older children, but it's a huge targeting effort, and has involved an enormous number of Americans, so and people around the world. So we need to confront the size of this thing.
And you had mentioned, do you think that the doctors would be receptive to the phrase of MKUltra? There's been so many that I know it's all about wording with it, but I think, like you said, presenting them the hard, black and white proof of maybe some documents and such, knowing that you are, someone is trying to regain a moment, fill in the gaps between a period of time. When my targeting began in 2012, after being kind of a whistleblower sort at a very corrupt business in Houston, but that was owned by a multimillionaire with a lot of political. He was even affiliated with medical in this state as well. So kind of all makes kind of sense now. It didn't really then when it was first happening. But in the very beginning, I did have time loss for several days in a row. I lost an hour. I'd literally wake up and blink and it would be an hour later. So that I knew that was that. Now I can reflect back, being 13 years into this, that there was something going on there with that they were connecting into me. And I have had an attempt to drug me. I had the Rufinol. I recognized someone that was affiliated with that company. And when I got to a place and then came back, unbeknownst to me, a friend of mine left, my beverage unattended, and something was put in there, and down on the floor I went, and here comes two off-duty retired officers. This millionaire was affiliated with Houston Police Foundation Board. So again, all of these things, it just expands out. It could be a private business, somebody who's affluent. It could be related to just so many different things. There's so many facets to it. But something that you said earlier is it really kind of resonated with me about the separation of the goats and the sheep, right? And how society in general, the population is viewed by the elite as at their disposal.
And disposable.
And there is no consciousness or reflection of, or the value of a life in that level of elitism. Like you said, it's about preserving like royal bloodlines and all of these. And I think that another thing that you said is that thread to disconnect that person from a God source, which is where, we're divine sovereign beings, and to disconnect us from our divine birthright. That's why all of this ritual and satanic is, because the kryptonite to that is that connection with God's source.
Yes, it's the human soul.
Yes.
So it's all about the extraction of the soul and then the replacement of the soul by a God particle. CERN, all of CERN, the Large Hadron Collider, one of their major projects is to create a God particle. So they want to become gods. And the MKUltra survivors who become the super soldiers, become the super spies, become the super prostitutes, are all meant to serve them. And the ones who've kept their souls have to be kept away. So, but the power is in the human soul. The power of connection, one person to another, is through your soul. And that can't be taken from you. You would have to give that. So we're learning. The survivors are really. I'm 76. I'm one of the first to pop out the other end, but there are thousands behind me who are going to be. I think the program wears off in your 60s and 70s, and if you live long enough, there are a lot of us out there, and who still have their souls intact, and we'll join the fight to free our minds and to get our country back into some kind of logical, God-loving order.
Absolutely. And in your view, how do the mind control methods that were explored in MKUltra manifest in today's forms of the psychological manipulation or exploitation? It just seems like there's a lot of parallels from what you described and what you went through in the MKUltra to what all of us are, going through, present day that have been going through this. Like for me, it's 13 years, but there's so much. It seems like the psychological manipulation is a key component because of the trauma induced and the emotional triggers in the splintering and, the numb out of disassociating due to the repetitive, cycles of trauma and torture and physical, the physical and the mental abuse. What recommendations do you have or advice to those who have gone through the MKUltra program and similar torture programs, and in terms of paving a way for their healing?
Well, that's that's a library full of books on that right there, because there were so many different programs. And I'm not a therapist, but it's important for therapists and survivors to work together to create the programs to help people. And the government is going to be a blockage every step of the way. And there's another interesting report that just came out, which is the 2025 Trafficking in Persons report, which is published by the State Department every year. And it's the basis for all the funding and programs throughout the United States on human trafficking. And the whole purpose of the TRIP report is to rate every single country as to who has a trafficking problem, who's really evil trafficking problem, and who's pretty good. Well, of course, they rate United States as the top, the best, no program. All the programs are effective. The hotline that doesn't work at all is working just great.
Mm-hmm.
Police are trained. Rescues are taking place. Victims are taken care of. None of which is true. And in 2003, when the Trafficking in Persons Office was started at the State Department, I was one of their very first grantees. So, and for 10 years, I had grants from the Trafficking in Persons Office to partially fund my work in Russia. And what we found was that the 3 leading countries that were the receiving countries for the trafficked children from Russia and all over the former Soviet Union were Germany, Israel, and the United States. Those 3 by far. So here I was, their grantee, showing that their report was false, and coming back and presenting the information to them about who was trafficking, where they were trafficking. We had flights. We knew what cities they were going into. We knew what organizations. We had names of corrupt cops. We had all of that. They weren't interested at all. So it all fell on deaf ears. And my organization, Miramed, wound up being defunded, actually then funneled through the International Organization of Migration, where there was some funny business going on there. But so anyway, it was we were punished for telling the truth, and they're lying. They're lying about the country. They're lying about what's being done. They know. I mean, if their own grantees are coming back and reporting to them, their findings, then, and they choose to ignore them as if we don't exist, even though they're funding us. I was actually their largest grantee.
Wow.
And yeah.
Just don't touch that subject of what you were,
Yeah, just don't tell the truth.
Yeah, exactly. Just look the other way. That's what we, experience when we're, trying to speak up, when we're seeing things that harm other people. When you were in Russia and you were trying to improve the maternal care because of what you witnessed, at a birth house, right? And you had seen that if a woman gave birth to a child, like I remember reading about there was a redheaded child that was left unattended, and you had inquired why was that child there, and that it was because the child had red hair and was being like forfeited because that was not acceptable, or desirable. And then you found that, children who were rejected in this way were then put into, you know, institution, right? Or and neglected to the point of, starvation. Do you want to talk about that as well? Of just, and a lot of this is where you found that they were being then put into programs like the child trafficking and even organ harvesting, right?
It wasn't until later that we discovered the organ harvesting was not in Russia. That was actually in Ukraine.
Okay.
But they were being trafficked from the orphanages as soon as they reached puberty. So in my book Angels Over Moscow, I go into detail about how I started working in one of the birth centers in Moscow, and we discovered that children were being about a third of children were being abandoned at birth, and they had pretty advanced ways of talking women into giving up their children. And then the children would go into these baby houses and into these intermediate houses and then be trafficked into international sex trafficking rings where very often they were used and then killed. So, organ trafficking could have happened once they were across borders.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a horrific situation. And I don't know. I to cover it is huge to cover those years, but I detail it in my book because step by step uncovering this and following a group of girls that I'd known for years who suddenly vanished out of an orphanage in northern Russia, and I followed them. They'd been taken by bus into Finland, right across the border. And the bus became a rolling brothel, and men would come on the bus and rape the girls. This was a group of teenage girls. And then eventually the bus made its way into Norway and through Tromsø up to Kirkenes, which is in northern Norway. And I traced it all the way there and found out that by the time it reached Kirkenes, the children had all died. So that event and spending a night in Kirkenes in the total dark and all by myself and just so feeling so completely helpless, and then realizing that if I didn't do something, nobody was going to do anything, and that I wasn't helpless, that I was helpless when I was a little child, but I was not helpless as an adult.
Right.
And that's a situation we're all in. We look at the scale of the targeting that's going on. It's huge. It's enormous. And if we feel isolated and we start feeling small and helpless, we're defeated. And we're not small and helpless. We're
Right.
big, noisy adults. So that's from here on. This is where we have to go as members of the organization or individuals. And I'm working with several groups of MKUltra survivors who've basically gone through what those girls in the bus went through and what the kids in the orphanage went through. Same kind of torture, abuse, neglect, maybe for different reasons. But we're not helpless.
Exactly. We're more powerful than we realize, I think. And It just seems like, you obviously you chose in that moment that to say, you're not a helpless child. You're a strong adult, and we can use our voice and to spread the awareness and to get it out in this critical time for humanity. As both a physician and a survivor, what advice would you give to mental health professionals working with individuals who may have been affected by the trauma from the trafficking and the experimentation programs?
Well, and I was going to say something about the medical profession in general. The documents um, address the fact that when they formed the MKUltra program in 1953 and then started putting it in university hospitals and regular hospitals around the country, that they were concerned that the medical staff would interfere with what they were doing and would have moral qualms about the kinds of experiments that were going on. And they thought that would be a major stumbling block to moving forward with the MKUltra program. And they discovered that it wasn't. They found the medical profession very easy to convince that this was worth doing if they paid them. So they figured out in the 1950s how easily corruptible doctors were, how money oriented they were, and that you can read it. It's in the documents. They're surprised.
Wow.
They had a higher opinion of the medical profession.
Do you think that in the medical profession and in law enforcement and I guess intelligence too, do you think those roles might attract narcissists? Because only to me, if somebody can emotionally shut off and detach the value of life over money, to me, there's something not wired right.
Well, the medical profession, it's you should be willing, and law enforcement too, you should be willing to sacrifice yourself to do the right thing.
Right.
That's what I thought it was all about.
Right.
And I think probably 70% of doctors and law enforcement feel that way. But there's a significant percentage that can be bought, and it was much, much higher than they had anticipated, and it made it much easier. They had more trouble with teachers and educators and schools who objected to children showing up like I did with black eyes and bleeding noses and no shoes. And so my parents always handled it by just moving to another school district. And but that's changed too. That they accept, and also it's much less crude now because the grooming and the mind control can be done through smartphones and computers and over the internet, whereas having to do it completely in person. So, and in terms of the therapists, they don't seem to have much of a clue, and why would they? Because all of their training, all the university programs, all their professional programs don't include MKUltra as a real thing. In fact, someone received a Nobel Prize for describing false memory and claiming that it's all completely false, which is completely false.
How convenient, right?
Yes. And the timing, the documents come out, say it's all true. Well, this person got a Nobel Prize for saying it's all false, So it's coup and counter coup. So the profession is pathetically ignorant, whether it's willful or not, I don't know. But, if the Trafficking in Persons Office and the Nobel Peace Prize or whatever prize, they're all saying, oh no, it's completely false, then how do they get paid for their work on working with people with MKUltra? So it's got a ways to go in terms of being any kind of mainline therapy. And I'm working with a group who's working on designing a series of video films, which will be extremely useful on what MKUltra is, testimonies from survivors and medical professionals, and so it's the beginning. It's all the beginning, and it really only began when that document release in 2024 came out and said, yeah, okay, we admit it, we did it, and it was awful. And they have a section in there where they write about how, well, yeah, not everything worked well. We lost a bunch died, but we had a good time. I mean, I literally said that, and having been one of the little kids at their good times, I just...
It's just, for a rational mind to be able to try to understand that thought process of how someone could say it was a good time, except for, a few casualties.
You died. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of messy.
Yeah. Do you think that there's like an international connection? Obviously, there has to be for this to be so worldwide spread. But, do you feel like there is, what governments are involved, or maybe being the spearhead of this inner network of targeting, and all connected with the MKUltra and such? You had mentioned that
clearly the British,
mm-hmm.
British, German, Australian, but what divisions, what part, I don't know. We'll have to work more. I mean, this international symposium that we had last week is the first time that all of us realized how this has been operating in we had 6 countries, so we had at least 6 countries, and how many more? 2 more have been added since then.
Mm-hmm.
People coming forward and describing it happening, but what divisions, who, how, we don't know yet. But you said something in your introduction, which is really true, and this is something that survivors need to acknowledge about themselves, is we are really, really strong. I mean, to have survived the torture, the torment, the public beatings, the beatdowns, the fact that no matter what we did, we weren't going to get to the top spot because we had souls. We were being punished for being good people.
Mm-hmm.
But we survived it, and here we are. And the dissociative identity, they call it disorder. It's really a survival mechanism. The ability to split your mind, and I've got photographic memory in 100 different boxes inside my head that gives me an enormous amount of capacity and recall and intelligence, and we're all like that. So we've got to acknowledge, appreciate, and accentuate our own power. And I see that in the targeted community. I mean, people are down with the targets and the attacks, but you're still here. And targeted justice does a tremendous job of fighting back. And it's really just the beginning of the battle. So we've got to get the MKUltra survivors sort of crawl out at the end of the battle and are sort of still at the stage that they're amazed they're still alive. And I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But they've got to realize what a powerful, intelligent, capable community they are, because they are the goats. If you survive that program, you're what the elites called a goat.
Mm-hmm.
So, you've got power, you've got power, skills, psychic abilities, you've got strength that now it's a matter of figuring out how to use it, and to use it not in an evil way, but in a way to stop targeting, stop abuse of children, stop this crazy child sacrifice, stop child trafficking, clean up this country, and become the stewards of the world that God meant us to be.
That's so beautifully said. What recommendations do you have for someone that believes that they're being trafficked?
Being trafficked?
Trafficked, yes.
Well, it depends on the situation,
Mm-hmm.
like who they are, how old they are, where they are, what kind of trafficking they're experimenting. There is help, there are ways to get help, but it all depends on what kind of institutional situation you're stuck in.
You had mentioned a couple of organizations that you're a part of that is related to the MKUltra. What organizations are those that you're a
Well,
part with?
I've been working with Our Country, Our Children, and we've been collecting information on child grooming and child trafficking. But it's been impossible to raise funds to do anything beyond collecting a library of material. And I would recommend going to that website and reading that material, because there's a large focus there on what is happening in the world of human trafficking. How is it happening? How it is probably happening in your own community. There's a lot of steps that need to be done before we are efficient at fighting it. But definitely go to the Our Country, Our Children website and read the articles. Also, several of my videos are there, and there's reference material from other people's websites. And it's nowhere near enough. It's just a beginning, but people need to begin. You need to begin somewhere. We need to begin to be smarter. We need to stop being influenced by I hope after this latest pandemic fiasco that people realize that you shouldn't just automatically do what the government tells you to do.
It's
I
the
don't
time to
know.
question everything.
Yes, definitely.
To
Yes.
definitely disconnect from mainstream. Do your own research. Go to the more underground sources of information. And again, that well is tainted too. But once you start to see and do your own research, then you can read between the lines of where the truth exists. Certainly, your own truth, your own personal truth, and what you have been subjected to as a person being targeted. But this is where we use our powerful voice to be that squeaky wheel, that we're not going anywhere. We're going to continue to raise awareness on this, because it's all connected. Like you said, this is, so many people, including myself at times, I raffle with this, is like, how could something so evil continue to persist? Well, since the beginning of time, it seems there's just been that, the powers that be. And again, I think most of this is connected to elitists and the government is in, just kind of a mechanism that these elites do use. They use them to involve with all that. They all get paid well for doing this and looking the other way and experimenting and perfecting warcraft, which is mind related. It's just so interconnected with all of this stuff that is going on with children, the pedophilia, all of these levels of different torture that is being done against humanity. And I think that we're heading into a point where something's got to give. This iceberg is continuously revealing itself every day of how these tentacles are so deep and have been going on for so long, but they have similarities. It's all about power, control, greed, and viewing a life as invaluable and a commodity and expendable and open to experimentation. What do you think, in your opinion, is it going to take to completely shut down the targeting programs?
I think that huge steps forward are being made, not by funding programs that are all shut down by the Trafficking in Persons report and the repression that is exerted throughout the country by the CIA, but the very fact that all this stuff is visible now. It's a different world than in the 1950s, when they could actually have plausible deniability. They could hide away responsibility, and you could never get a hold of any documents or information, or you were isolated and much more helpless during that period of time. And now it's all out there. If you dig and work, you'll find it, and you can communicate with other people who are involved in the fight. So it's a matter of using the same tools they used against us to fight them. In other words, they've used media, they've used entertainment, they've used all these tools to like convince the population that the world is one way. But we have the same access, and like your work, what you're doing, and what Targeted Justice is doing, putting out films and educational films, and you just keep doing that. You just keep putting out the information and putting out the information, because in this world where it gets dispersed throughout the internet, we never know who's seeing it. We don't know who is listening, or who is, or what age they are. And as a 76-year-old, I tend to discount people under the age of 30 as like kids. What do they know? They're just kids. No, they're the future. So it's extremely important. So I am personally just going to keep talking about what I know, what I've seen, what I've experienced. I don't have the solutions. I'm too old probably to come up or to see these solutions activated to the end. If I was 50 years old, I would go out and demand a site, a facility, an abandoned building be reconstructed by a state, and give me the materials to start a deprogramming program. Now, this is something that can be done and needs to be done. So it's just that I'm coming to my sell-by date at 76, so I'm not going to be the one to do it. But I will just keep broadcasting everything I know out there, and rely on God to get it to the people who need to hear it, because we need to change our direction, or we're just going to turn into techno-fascists and destroy the planet, because we're on the way to it. So this needs to stop.
I really do think it is, a much needed revolution going on right now. And, people are being made aware of what they've been led to believe has not been truth. I think it is a very pivotal time for us to use our greatest gift, which is our voice, our hands to type it out and send a message, and to forward out that information. You never know who it could be, a lifeline to someone. You just never know who it's going to reach. I just give it to God to do the distribution, and I just, I get it out there and trust that someone in need, or not understanding, and then it makes sense when they read the article, because I really do think there are so many people in this world, outside of the 300,000 in the US, that are going through this and unaware, because we know the different categories, those that know that something's being done to them versus those that have not yet experienced with the digital ID that they're really trying to push on us too. And it just seems like, unless something gives and we continue to get this information out, we're just headed into this mass enslavement and surveillance state of affairs. But that is why it's so important to be the ones that get this information out, so that people are aware. I mean, there's so many people that are asleep. And why in this day and age, of course, I'm targeted. So I've had the rude awakening. I've had my world imploded by this experience, but then I picked up the pieces, which I encourage every single targeted individual to do, that you can pick up the pieces and you can build a different existence, and to disconnect from the previous, but still honor it. It was a part of you and your journey, but this is where you are now, and you have this power amongst you that you can get this information out because you've survived it and you live it day to day. And this is how we can activate that warrior within that dispels this information out to others that are unaware. I think it's a very, very important role that we carry because we have that power with us. And this power that we have makes those that know about what's happening to us extremely nervous, right?
Yes. And I admit, until I was 60 years old, I didn't know what had happened to me. I was acting as an active agent against it in my work with human trafficking and other things that I've done in the world. But it took a great deal of meticulous work and a lot of help from people like Kathy O'Brien, who wrote the first book on deprogramming, and her story is really well worth following. But so there are a lot of people that have got this lump in their chest and a big empty vacant places in their lives. They don't know what happened to them. They probably don't know who their family is, even because I think a lot of people were raised in families that weren't their families. That there's going to be a huge amount of awakening. I think I'm just the beginning of the bell curve because I'm old. But the people from in their 60s, 50s, 40s, 30s, there were more and more people involved, and there'll be more and more people waking up. And so the more material we can have waiting for them, like even the value of alerting them all to the suicide program, that's going to save a lot of people. So that's got to be put out there over and over and over again. Because if you let the memories, I did this, you just let the memories just flood over you. I was very fortunate in that I was a medical professional. I had psychiatrists that I knew and trusted, and I went to them. And if you don't have that and you're not supported, then you're very much at risk. So, but you're not if you know. So.
I mean, what you said, and I'm really grateful that you brought it up, that the way that the program, the MKUltra, was structured was if you began to remember, then it activated that kill program, that suicide program within the person. And I think that can be very applicable to the targeting community today that has been going through this as well. So just by knowing that our recollection of what has happened to us. Now we're living through this torture day to day, and we're remembering it very, very vividly too. And in any kind of trauma-induced incident, in violence, there can be, like, the mind wants to, deactivate that and push it away, but we're still perpetually every single day going through this 24/7 torture. So it's still very active to us. But who is to say, all right, let's say if it ended tomorrow, and then, because the memories are so overwhelming. And I do agree with you that doing that level of therapeutic work, immersing yourself into healing modalities and giving that safe space for your for what's happened to you, and being that observer and doing the soul work and raising frequency and consciousness and all of these things, because that it engulfed me into all these studies of psychology, that was very therapeutic to me too. I did try to talk to someone once, but again, if those that you go to talk to what's happening to you, they don't receive it because they don't know about it. And they want to think that you're mentally unstable, want to put you on some drugs and all of that. But we have to find that one that we can speak to and really have, a therapeutic kind of moment.
Yeah, that's really, really a good point. Is it we should not be put on drugs. That the worst thing for an MKUltra survivor or a torture survivor is to be put on psychotropic drugs or anything that alters your consciousness, because it can trigger the suicide program. It can trigger uncontrolled release of memories. So that's a really important point.
And on the disclaimer for some of those psychotropic drugs, prior to being targeted, I worked over 8 years for a psychiatric hospital, but I was more of staff, doing in different role. I wasn't in that type of role, but it really, I thank God for opening, that pathway, which was leading up to me being targeted. So I kind of look at everything that I've gone through in life as a teacher. And once we start, viewing what we've gone through, these hardships and these battles and these struggles that we've had in life, and that all led up to our targeting, it was actually making us strong during those moments. And that's where I think it can open that door to being very healing. But with that community being so resistant to what we have to say too, and knowing that just by, being a part of that psychiatric, kind of role that I had, not the role itself, but working at a psychiatric hospital. If you look at the disclaimers on the psychotropic drugs, it says that it can cause depression and have feelings of suicide. So you have to be very cognizant of what you decide to take. It's your free will choice, what you want to take and such, but also be aware. Because I can understand, like what you just said, it can easily trigger that suicide program with somebody who has had such a traumatic and torturous experience.
Exactly. Yes. And if you have the sense that you've got a lot of hidden stuff in there, that means it's pushing on the barriers to begin with, and the psychotropic drugs can just release it. And you don't want that to happen. And there's no reason for you to. It's not a psychotropic. You're not depressed. You are repressed. So it's a matter of slowly extracting the trauma and dealing with it. And the other thing to accept is that it takes a long time, and torture and ritual abuse are body memories, especially if you're a child and you're being sexually and physically abused. Those are body memories. So when the memory comes back, it's your body that remembers, and you relive the symptoms, you relive the pain, you relive the terror. It's in your body. You cannot intellectualize it. You can't go through psychoanalysis and left brain it away. It's and it can be done, and you can control the intensity, you can control the speed, you can control the flow. And Kathy O'Brien recommends taking a notepad and just physically writing everything out in longhand, which engages a different part of your brain, but it lets it transfer through your body and onto paper. rather
Right.
than through your body and just attacking you. So
Yes,
it lets it out.
because when we have these memories and stuff, coming through, it's like just recycling through the mind. It's like on repeat. So journaling, like you said, is really important and therapeutic to, it's a release. I think grounding techniques and breath work, breathing through where, okay, you feel like this engulfed, emotional trigger is coming upon you, and just, centering yourself and realizing, okay, feeling the chair supporting you, feeling your body, and knowing that you are safe in that moment. And for some of us, that's hard because we're getting bombarded with frequencies, that these microwaves, and the pain is so intense. But it's all about trying to find the ways where you can find comfort for yourself and experiment with different type of either energy healing modalities or techniques, breath work, all of these things that are very therapeutic. Drawing, art, you've got to be able to find things that bring you comfort, especially when from one day to another you don't know what you're going to receive.
Yes.
I
And it
wanted.
is,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was just going to agree with you.
I wanted to make sure, for those that joined in later, that Dr. Engel, she has 3 books. She's got Sparky, Surviving the Sex. What is that? Surviving Sex Magick, and that is your personal memoir of being part of the MKUltra program. She also has the Angels Over Moscow and Moscow Traffic. You can learn more about her books at JulietteEngel.com. I have it up on the screen. And that you just it must feel good to also, if and therapeutic too, to get all of this information publicized. And that in itself, to just was, when you wrote Sparky, was that very healing for you too? And
Oh,
then
yes. Yes.
and it also is like, wow, look at all that I have gone through, and I am still standing.
Yeah, that took me into Angels Over Moscow.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, all of that. And I put the books in the slide section. Can you put that up?
Yes. There we go.
There we are.
Yes.
There's the 3 books.
Yes.
So Sparky is Surviving Sex Magick. Sex Magick was the program I was in, and I wrote it from my perspective as a child. So, which is very different than being an adult looking down at what happened to me. So I relived it and wrote it. And Angels Over Moscow is my 20 years living and working in Russia with orphanages, birth houses, and running the Underground Railroad. That was a difficult and really exciting time in my life. And I came back to the US in 2010 and then began going through my ancestry and trying to put together the rest of my life. And Moscow Traffic is really, it's sort of the Russian Godfather, because I lived through the breakup of the former Soviet Union, and I knew the people that later became the Russian mafia and the Russian government. And so I was very familiar with how all these pieces fit together. So I wrote it as a historical novel. But if you read that, you'll learn a lot about Russia, about how it really is, and who the people are, and who the godfathers are.
I encourage the audience you can learn more about each of the books too on Juliette's website, JulietteEngel.com. And I also wanted to bring back up on the screen as well, for those that may have joined in later, all of the documentation that has been released at the end of 2024 and October of this year from the National Security Archive. there is 2 sets of documents there that are all about the MKUltra. And as Juliette had stated earlier, it even has the handwritten notes between these doctors and such. So there's a lot of content there, and I really appreciate you, Juliette, bringing it to our attention for those that are not aware. That's
they admit to all of it. This is a confession. They admit to doing all of these things, and this is the very first time they've ever committed and admitted.
And it's quite detailed, the amount of information, and hopefully they'll bring forward more information from it as well. It's surprising to see that much out there.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
Yes. Oh, it has just been really amazing talking to you. I mean, I'm just such in awe, and what the resilience and the bravery, and to be forging forward and still committed into helping, so many that are targeted, and the children that are trafficked as well. Before we close out, do you want to talk to us just a little bit more about our country, our children? And you've got quite a bit of information out there, and you're partnered with others for this organization. And let's also talk about your podcast as well.
Well, my podcast hasn't started yet. It's going to be starting in about a month.
Okay.
And I'm going to do a series of interviews. I want to do voices from the 20th century because like me, I'm pretty old, and all my friends and people that I've worked with and known for many years, and who are the leaders in their fields and just exciting, interesting persons, are about to leave. So I want to record them and create a library of the voices who had such an influence, but maybe buried, especially as we move towards techno-fascism and extreme internet censorship. I want to create an air-gapped library of interviews of these people that can be used in the future. So, because I truly believe we just have to keep putting the information out there and talking to the future without any feedback or knowing that who we're even talking to. They may not even be born yet, but it's very important. And there are a lot of things I'd like to do with our country, our children, that there isn't funding for, but I encourage you to go there and read the articles, because we have excellent articles and research up there on the website, and it will take many nights of reading through all that information, but it's relevant to everyone in this country right now as to how human trafficking is being done, who's doing it, where it's being done, the grooming, how the UN plays into this, how the International Organization of Migration plays a key role in trafficking people into the United States. And then the 300,000 children that were documented coming over the border, funded by the State Department this last year. So all of that's on there. So please take a look.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to your podcast and all of the efforts that you're doing to record, those voices, so that, and that's just like with the podcast itself here, and any of the information that we put out there, it is recordable history. And for our future, it's a critical time for humanity. My heart really just goes out to, children growing up in this time, but we have to remain, hopeful that by our exposure to what is being done, that things will change and it will be different for them. Because if we don't take a stand for them now, then it just seems like, things are just going to get worse. So that we have to be brave. We have to speak out about these things, even when it's uncomfortable. I try to look at it from the perspective of the whole, and humanity, and Mother Earth, and all our beautiful creatures too. They're getting tortured and subjected to these waves and frequencies as well, and the manipulation that is going on with them. And it's just it is such a it's every facet of life is being subjected to these manipulations and
Yes.
interference. So we have to be brave and take a stand. Would you like to say any final words for our audience today? This has been such a wonderful conversation. You've given such great content, and you just have such a wealth of knowledge and just over these programs, and the way that you have articulated your message here today is much appreciated and valued by this community.
Oh, thank you, Melissa, and thank you for the podcast. And Targeted Justice is a great organization, and I look forward to continuing the conversation and speaking and working with you all.
Yes, you're welcome back anytime. You just have so much information and wisdom to share, so I would love to have you back again soon. Maybe we can have a reappearance after you've had your podcast going for a while, and we could talk about that.
No, that sounds great.
Awesome. And again, thank you. And thank you, each and every one, for tuning in today. It's been 1 year. How time flies, 52 episodes. I can't think of a more wonderful guest to have on that 1 year anniversary. I really appreciate you, Juliette, and everything that you've done. And I was so excited that you joined the advisory board for Targeted Justice. So there's much, much more to come. And thank you again, each and every one of you. And God bless, and I'll see you next Sunday.